Hey there! Welcome to the Distracted Librarians podcast. We're your friendly neighborhood bookworms with a penchant for all things pop culture.
Picture this as our digital campfire, where we dive into our latest obsessions, analyze our favorite distractions, and rediscover the joy of reading.
Whether you're a media enthusiast, a book lover, or just need a break from the daily grind, you've come to the right spot.
So kick back, relax, and get delightfully distracted with us.
Hey everybody, today on the Distracted Librarians podcast, we will be talking about some big news in the library world. But first, my name is Nicole.
I'm Drew.
I'm Killian.
I'm Amanda.
Today we will be talking about the White House executive order that was announced on March 14th, 2025, that they will aim to eliminate the Institute of Museum and Library Services. This is the only federal agency that's devoted to America's libraries. To help us out with this topic, we have a special guest, the director of the Bloomfield Township Public Library, Tera Moon. Hi, Tera.
Hi, everyone.
Hello.
Thanks for having me.
Can you please tell us what your role is at the library?
Yeah, I am the library director. For those not in the library world, I'm like the CEO of the library. I have full responsibility for the library, and I answer to our 6-member elected library board.
Nice. And what is your favorite thing about libraries?
My favorite thing about libraries is the people. Most people think libraries are about books, but I think they're about people. The staff that we have at the library that are really devoted to providing great service, and of course our patrons that come and use the library. Without people, there would be no library.
Aw. So, with that being about libraries, what is the Institute for Museum and Library Services?
Yeah, well, as Nicole said in the intro, it's the only federal agency devoted to supporting America's libraries, and it mostly administers grant funding. So it has a budget and distributes grants to states, and then the states use that money to support the public and other libraries in their state.
Yeah, so I think a lot of the public, if they do think about it, they're like, how are libraries actually funded? And there are a lot of different ways that we are funded, but this is just one of the ways.
Yes, yeah. In fact, this funding in the state of Michigan, for the most part, doesn't directly support public libraries, but it supports a lot of activities that public libraries make possible.
Good to know.
So how does that funding affect, BTPL specifically?
Yeah, so we are a public library that's mostly supported by tax dollars. So 97% of our budget comes from local property taxes. So that's our patrons that use our library. We get a small amount of funding from the state and a small amount of funding from penal fines. A lot of people don't know that if you get a speeding ticket, that money goes to the state and then comes to libraries. So we don't get any federal funding directly at this library, and most public libraries in Michigan are that way.
Okay.
Yep. So how does that, affect all of Michigan? Is it the same for all libraries, or?
Yeah, I can't speak to every single library, but I think, again, most public libraries in Michigan are funded by local tax dollars, so this federal funding doesn't impact them directly. Smaller libraries, it might be different. And like I said, there's a lot of shared resources, which I know we're going to talk about in a little bit, that this federal funding does support. And because it supports these shared resources, it allows a lot of smaller libraries without bigger budgets to do more for their patrons than what they would be able to do otherwise.
Yeah. And what are some of the other federal agencies that are dedicated to library funding? I know I never knew about the penal thing until you said it 2 minutes ago.
Oh, yeah, and that's state.
Yeah.
So, yeah, that's state. I don't think that there really are any other federal agencies dedicated to library funding. I think that the IMLS is it. And then again, it's all very, very localized.
Okay. Yeah.
So I know there's been a lot of talk, as we're recording this, it's been about a month since this executive order was announced. And there's been a lot of talk about reactions to that and thoughts about that. What was your initial reaction to hearing about this executive order?
I was disappointed, and I'll say a little bit scared and nervous, not quite being sure how this would play out. But mostly disappointed just because this kind of sends a message that public libraries and libraries in general aren't very supported.
So how specifically would the loss of these IMLS funds and the closure of IMLS affect Michigan libraries?
Yeah, so the Library of Michigan is the organization that administers these federal grants that come from IMLS. And the Library of Michigan spends that money in a couple of different ways. The Library of Michigan pays for databases that are shared with all of the libraries in Michigan, ebook collection, test prep. There's a lot of professional development that the Library of Michigan supports for librarians. But probably the biggest one and the thing that most people are going to know about is MelCat.
Love a good MelCat.
Love a good
Yeah,
MelCat.
MelCat's the
Yeah.
best.
I'm a huge fan of MelCat, but for this purpose, I'm going to pretend that I don't know what it is. So, Tara, what is MelCat?
I'm so glad you asked, Amanda. MelCat is a way that you can order a book from almost any library in the state of Michigan, and it will arrive at your library within a few days. It's sort of like the closest thing we can get to Amazon in the public library world.
Yeah.
So, can I get a book from U of M?
You sure can.
What about somewhere in the UP that maybe specializes in, I don't know, Michigan waterfalls?
Absolutely.
Okay.
Yeah, there's a wide network of public libraries, university libraries, and some other special libraries in MelCat.
I have personally found that there is almost everything on MelCat. So this is a situation where if a patron comes up to us at the desk and says, I am really looking for this obscure thing, chances are we might be able to get it from another library because of this awesome service.
It's also such a good search engine for us in the first place of figuring out what sort of things exist. I tend to not like to go straight to like a Google search because that'll pull in all kinds of media, all kinds of everything, and that's not really conducive to what our patrons can get. So I like to start from a place of, this is still something that we can get our patron.
So, if I want to get something that's really more of like a textbook, would MelCat be able to do that?
Yeah, as long as there's a library out there that owns it and is willing to loan it, you can MelCat it.
That's pretty cool.
It is pretty cool, yeah. It really allows libraries to expand their collections. Every library has a finite budget, and we can only buy so much, and space.
Yeah.
And so MelCat makes it so that the whole state of Michigan is your library.
Pretty cool.
And from a space perspective, it also allows us to get more things because we can count on more materials being out of the library at a given time.
Good point.
So how does this work? Like, how does it work if, say, someone is interested in a book they can't get? Can you walk us through the process? Or maybe one of our librarians
Yeah, I
wants
was
to walk
going to say,
us through.
I think one of you guys should, because you do it more than I do, probably.
We sure do.
Yeah.
We sure do. So the Mel site has just a quick search database.
And can you tell me what that is?
It is elibrary.mel.org.
Okay, cool.
And you do that quick search on there. It does it by keyword or title, author, really anything you want to use as a search term. It's decently refined. And it will pull up everything that it can find in any connected catalog. With options for us to order it from any who listed as available. Every individual library gets to choose what is listed as requestable or not. I know some libraries that choose, not to request their local history collection, not to allow their new titles for request, and that's decisions that individual libraries make. But in general, if it's accessible at a library, it's accessible at any library.
Can I get a DVD?
Yes.
What about a VHS?
Weirdly, yes.
Okay, pretty cool.
Probably some vinyl out there, too.
Maybe some
Oh, yeah.
vinyl, yeah.
And isn't there a link right from our library catalog? If you look up a book or a record and it doesn't come up, there's a link right there to take you to MelCat.
Yep, exactly.
Yep. It'll do that from the individual item record. It'll also do that from your just basic catalog search. So if you type something into the catalog, it's not pulling up anything on our end. You just click on the Mel button and it will put that exact same search into Mel.
It's really a great resource for a lot of out-of-print things. We'll get a lot of people coming into the youth room wanting a picture book, a more obscure picture book from their childhood or something like that, that we don't have in spite of having a lot of picture books. And it lets us find libraries that have it because it's not something that we can purchase anymore.
So if you, in addition to going straight to the website or going to btpl.org and searching in our catalog, and then having it redirect to Mel, if you don't find what you're looking for, you can also call the library, talk to a librarian, and a lot of times if we don't have what you're looking for, we will say, well, I can get this for you from another library. What we're using is Melcat to do so. So if you're ever thinking like, oh, maybe, all the libraries in Oakland County have a shared database. Actually, no, what we do is we use Melcat as that shared database to see where these books are and where we can get them from.
Okay. It's also something that we use for purchasing. Every month, the circulation staff member who does Melcat for us will send out a list of everything that's been requested over the course of the last month. And we use that constantly to look into new things to buy for the library. One of the hardest things to make a decision for in purchasing is, will this be used by the patrons? So being able to point to that and say, yes, there was interest is a big deal for us.
Yeah, to justify buying more books in that subject area, for sure. So can someone break down some of the logistics?
I can.
Okay, cool, Tara.
I worked in circulation before I came to this library at the Southfield Public Library, and so I saw all the work that goes into running Melcat. The thing that's so great about Melcat is what's so great about libraries in general, because it's a shared resource. So it's a decentralized, for the most part, a decentralized service where it really relies on the labor in each individual library to make it run. So there are some people at the Library of Michigan that oversee it and keep it together and help route problems, but mostly it's local circulation staff. So that staff you were mentioning, they might run lists, and then our online database is connected to all the other databases in the libraries that participate in Melcat. So a staff member at the Peter White Library and the UP might get a ping that Killian just requested a book, and so somebody goes and hunts down that book and brings it to the circulation area. It gets packaged up and put into a bin. It goes to a sorting facility. It gets sorted into other bins, and then it gets delivered to the library. And then a staff person has to unpack it. It's so many individual items because it's a 1-to-1 ratio. It's like each patron requesting that book. So it's an incredible amount of labor that goes into it on the local level to make Melcat work and to make sure the patrons are getting the items that they want. And then following up on problems and hunting down things that haven't been returned, making sure they all get back to where they need to go.
So if I were to request a book through Melcat, how long does it take to come in to the Bloomfield Township Public Library?
So the official answer we give to patrons is 7 to 10 days. Realistically, it's going to be a little bit more dependent on what library it's coming from, how much of Michigan it has to cover to get to us. But we typically say 7 to 10.
I think that's really, honestly, sort of magical.
It is. It really is.
It's also really exciting when things show up. Sometimes it's a little bit quicker, and I will always plan for that week to 10 days, and then something shows up quicker. I'm like, oh my gosh, it's here!
Yeah.
So that's always fun.
It is.
I've definitely ordered a book through different online bookstores and had it take longer than a week. And this is completely free, so that's pretty amazing.
Sometimes I forget what I've ordered, and I'll get a notice that I have a Melcat. I'm like, what is it? And it's a fun surprise.
Yeah, so this is a service that we are all very fortunate to have. And I know for some libraries that really rely on Melcat a lot to supplement their collection for their patrons, it is something that they probably value even more than what we do.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I know that you talked about a lot of people process these Melcat requests at the local library level. Who runs it though? Who runs the database we've been talking about, the website we've been talking about?
Yeah, it's staff at the Library of Michigan that have that oversight of the website and the database. Like I said, it relies on connecting all of our local databases to each other. But there is just, I honestly don't know how many, but 1 or 2 staff people at Library of Michigan that oversee it.
Wow, that's a pretty powerful system. Yeah.
Yeah, that just, again, it's very decentralized. It really relies on a huge effort of a lot of people.
Do you know what the yearly budget is of Mel?
I don't off
Okay.
the top of my head. I know that the IMLS grants that go to the state of Michigan, to the Library of Michigan, total about $4.8 million, and about 75% of that pays for Melcat. So I don't know, do the math.
And that would be to cover the hosting of the website, the administrative people, the coordination efforts between them.
Yeah. Every library pays in a little bit for rides, which is the delivery service that is contracted with the Library of Michigan. So we all pitch in a little bit for that. It's a pretty small amount, a couple $1,000s.
Cool. So if IMLS is no longer funded and Melcat is primarily funded through IMLS, what does that mean? Is that
I don't know at this
Okay.
moment in time. That's one of the things that's frustrating about this, is that there's a lot of uncertainty on what will happen. I know that a lot of people in the library leadership at the state and local levels are talking about ways that Melcat could be funded if the IMLS funding goes away, and some other things. So people are talking about this and have their eye on it and are trying to figure out how we can keep Melcat going if we lose this IMLS funding.
I believe currently it's paid out through the end of the year regardless.
Yeah, that's what I've read, is that it's through, I think September is when I think that's when the federal budget ends, and then a new one starts in October. But yeah, it's paid for right now, so we continue to Melcat.
Are there any other groups that are challenging the executive order?
The American Library Association, also a group of attorneys general from 21 states have sued the Trump administration over this. And I think a union of municipal workers, AFSCME, is also joining that lawsuit.
Wow.
So people are trying to fight this. The agency was created by an act of Congress, so it takes an act of Congress to close it. And I just want to read this quote from one of the lawsuit for the attorneys general. The sudden halting of the agency's work after decades of close cooperation will immediately put at risk hundreds of millions of dollars in grant funding on which the states depend, and will undermine library programs, economic opportunity, and the free flow of commerce throughout the country. So it just really degrades what libraries do and do so well, which is sharing resources and supporting our communities in all kinds of ways.
Yeah. So this is all information regarding Michigan libraries specifically, because that's where we're based. But the American Library Association is a really great resource for more information. You can find them at ala.org. And also, you could also check out your state library associations to see how it affects your community specifically.
Yep, different states use this funding for different things, so it's important to know what's going on with your local libraries, because that may be different from what we're talking about, depending on where you're listening from.
Yeah, some libraries could use it more for specific services, for downloadable materials, for just different databases. It's a very state and occasionally local specific thing.
Mm-hmm. Okay, well, thank you, Tara, for joining us today. We really appreciate it.
Yeah, thank you for having me. This was fun.
All right.
Thank you.
Yeah, and we will see you next time. Thank you. Thank you for joining us for this episode of Distracted Librarians.
Many thanks to BCTV for their support in recording, editing, and releasing this podcast, and to the Friends of the Library for sponsoring closed captioning on every episode.
If you have any questions or suggestions, feel free to reach out to us at distracted@btpl.org.
Until then, keep those pages turning and those screens lighting up. We'll catch you in the next episode.
The views and opinions expressed in the Distracted Librarians podcast do not necessarily reflect those of Bloomfield Township, Bloomfield Township Public Library, Bloomfield Community Television, the Birmingham Area Cable Board, or its producers or production staff.